over for the last year was right in front of me. "Are you sure you're not just avoiding disgruntled customers?" I scoffed at the jab, but there was no hiding the smile, which seemed to be a side effect of being around Patrice. "For your information, Professor Denis, I happen to have one of the best conviction records in the state." He raised an eyebrow about 1/100th of a centimeter, which I guess was his version of acknowledgement, then spoke in a more serious tone than I was hoping for. "I'm aware, Counselor." I nodded, feeling unsure of how heavy this conversation was about to get, and desperate to come up with something to make it lighter. I brought out my grievances instead. "I was wondering if you'd made it up here," I offered, lifting a shoulder, the unsaid, "since I never heard from you again after you fucked me on every flat surface in my apartment," hanging in the air. "Welcome to the Finger Lakes." He bowed his head and started to look uncomfortable, but before I could interject, he opened his mouth. "Sorry I didn't get in touch. Things have been a little crazy this year. The job market was hectic and unpredictable, and I didn't decide on this position until late in the game." He sighed and fidgeted, almost unsure, which seemed so out of place. In the time I'd spent with him, Patrice seemed to be the walking embodiment of self-possessed, so seeing this side of him was endearing. "It's been an adjustment, to say the least." I dipped my head in response, not sure how to proceed. The pull I felt toward him on the verge of undoing my ability to carry on polite conversation. All I could think was, I want to touch you so badly. I had no right to it, though. On that, at least, I was very clear. Patrice's lack of interest had not been exactly subtle. Last summer, we'd been incendiary, coming together over and over again. From the start, the attraction between us had been undeniable. We'd seen each other by chance while he was in town helping his best friend with his food truck. And inevitably, we'd end up back at my place, tearing each other's clothes off. I'd felt a hunger for Patrice that seemed insatiable, and those few weeks, it seemed like it had been the same for him. But in the year after, his silence had been almost complete. Despite our connection, once Patrice was gone, he was gone. I knew he'd been back over the winter to visit Nesto, but he never made any efforts to get in touch or let me know he was in town. So when I heard from a friend in common he'd taken a job at Cornell, I was elated, thinking we'd be able to reconnect. A part of me even foolishly thinking his decision to take a job here had something to do with me. I'd texted him to congratulate him, but he'd responded with a thank you, and never contacted me again. It stung, but once I received the message he wasn't interested, I'd vowed to keep my distance. Now that he was here in front of me, I realized staying away from Patrice Denis was going to be much harder than I'd anticipated. Patrice cleared his throat, and I realized I'd been spacing out. So smooth. I looked up at him and managed to produce a smile as I tried to read his expression. "No worries, I know how it is. Never thought you'd end up here. It's a nice surprise." I dearly wished I could sound neutral when I was around Patrice, but thirsty and parched seemed to be my only settings when it came to him. This time he averted his eyes before answering me. I wondered if he was a bit more affected by me than he let on. "I'd say no to a job offer from an Ivy League school." Okay, not exactly a romantic revelation. I barely contained a frustrated sigh before I nodded. "Sure, congratulations on that. It's a big deal. How are you getting on? Did you find a place?" He pursed his lips, decidedly unhappy at the mention of his living situation. "Yeah, but I won't move in there for another week or so. I'm staying with Nesto and Jude until then." His best friend, Nesto, was coupled off with Jude, a local hottie librarian, and living in premarital bliss. "How is Nesto? I haven't been by the restaurant in a while," I said, barely repressing a groan. "I've been acting as interim DA since my boss had to take leave after having heart surgery. Not much time for longer lunches lately." That was the understatement of the century. But I did not want to deviate the conversation and my mining Patrice for intel on his living situation to talk about my work stress. But, to my surprise, Patrice raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations to you. Is the plan for you to run?" Patrice sounded genuinely interested, so I considered what to say for a moment. He wasn't the first person to ask me this, of course. Half of Ithaca was of a mind that I was a shoo-in for